Hello, dear friends. My name is Professor Singer, and I teach invention courses at the Raka Invention Academy in Kenya. Whether you're just starting your creative journey or already nurturing your inventive spirit, our academy, through its book, The Strategic Application of Ever So Powerful Artificial Intelligence, as well as its online courses, equips you with the tools and guidance to transform ideas into impactful solutions. Innovation is for everyone, and together, we can turn challenges into opportunities and make a transformative difference in your life, your career, your community, and perhaps the world. We'd love to join you in your journey. All right, have you seen the out-of-control flooding in Spain or the hurricanes in Florida? All right, let's talk about geoengineering. There is substantial evidence and scientific discussion suggesting that various forms of weather modification and even solar radiation management have already been tested and are being practiced. Imagine if instead of being a solution to climate change, geoengineering actually created climate problems or manipulated weather for certain interests. This idea is often discussed as a problem-reaction-solution approach, where someone creates a problem, waits for people to react, and then steps in with a solution that benefits them, even if it wasn't entirely necessary. So here's how it would work in terms of geoengineering. Let's say a powerful group or government decides to put particles, like aluminum or sulfur dioxide, into the atmosphere, then manipulate them with powerful electromagnetic energy from the ground or from space. These tiny particles, when spread across the sky, could actually change the weather in ways that aren't immediately obvious. They could lower temperatures or even shift rainfall patterns to make some areas drier or wetter than others. Instead of solving climate change, this could actually create weather issues like droughts, hurricanes, or floods that wouldn't normally happen. In this scenario, the group or government responsible might then wait until people start noticing the problems, like strange weather, failing crops, or even health issues from breathing in tiny particles. Once the problems are big enough to cause fear or worry, they could come forward with the solution. And guess what the solution is? More geoengineering, or maybe a new technology that they control. They could present themselves as the saviors, offering to fix the problem that they helped create in the first place. Why would anyone do this? One reason could be power or control. If a group can manipulate the weather, they might use it to control food production, water supplies, or even the economy. Imagine a drought in one country while another has good rainfall. This could give an advantage to one area while causing shortages or instability in another. By controlling the solution, they also keep control over the resources and technology that people need to deal with these problems. Evidence from environmental samples, like elevated levels of nanoparticulates in soil, water, and biological tissues, as well as data from atmospheric testing, patents, and whistleblower testimony, strongly suggests that geoengineering activities are not only ongoing but have measurable impacts on our environment. These activities appear to influence weather patterns, affect ecosystems, and potentially impact human health. Observing unusual cloud formations or persistent trails in the sky aligns with this broader body of evidence, indicating that geoengineering's effects are both visible and scientifically detectable today. Although geoengineering may have initially been classified as experimental, the widespread presence of nanoparticulates and the observable impact on weather patterns and ecosystems indicate that these activities are being implemented on a larger scale. This level of deployment suggests an intentional approach rather than limited, isolated research. Widespread evidence from independent environmental sampling, including elevated levels of nanoparticulates like aluminum, barium, and strontium in rainwater, soil, and biological tissues, aligns with the substances specified in geoengineering patents. Atmospheric tests conducted via aircraft also reveal these same particulates at specific altitudes, where natural sources would not account for such concentrations. Additionally, historical records, patents, and whistleblower testimonies from military and scientific personnel substantiate that geoengineering technology has existed and has likely been in operational use for decades, supporting claims that climate manipulation is actively underway. In short, If geoengineering were used as a way to create problems rather than solve them, it could put a lot of power in the hands of those controlling it. By using this problem reaction solution setup, they could introduce a climate or weather problem, wait for people to demand a fix, and then offer a solution that keeps them in charge. This would be less about helping the planet and more about controlling resources, economies, and possibly even people's lives. If you ever observe long-lasting white trails from aircraft, which actually spread out and become larger, rather than quickly disappear, you are likely under geoengineering attack.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going deep on geoengineering.
Oh, yeah.
Which...
This is a big one?
It is a big one, and
Yeah.
it's one that people have a lot of questions about and a lot of theories about.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try to dig through all of that today.
Yeah.
We have a ton of research articles and patents.
Patents are interesting.
Oh, very interesting.
Especially the historical ones. Right?
Yes, going way back.
Some of those go way back.
Yeah, and kind of trying to figure out, what geoengineering is, what it can do, and really what it might already be doing.
And I think that's the big question that everyone wants to know the answer to, right? Like, what is already happening?
Right.
Is this just theoretical, or is this something that's actively going on?
Exactly.
And I think to start with, we have to look at this idea of the problem reaction solution paradigm.
Okay.
Which is something that...
Break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, so it's this idea that someone or some group intentionally creates a problem, waits for the public to react negatively, to kind of freak out about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come in with their solution that they had ready all along.
Ooh, sneaky.
Yeah, it's like a pre-planned kind of...
So how would that work with geoengineering?
Well, so the problem could be climate change itself.
Okay.
Right. Like maybe they're making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be specific weather events.
Oh, wow.
Creating these extreme events to really get people scared.
Interesting.
And then the solution is their geoengineering technology that conveniently they control.
Right. They're the only ones who can fix it.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And then you start thinking about the implications of that.
Yeah.
Like if you can control the climate, you can control food production,
wow,
water resources, even political power.
That's a huge claim.
It is. It is.
But for our listener out there who maybe hasn't gone down all these rabbit holes that we have,
right?
Can you give us just a basic definition of what geoengineering is?
Sure.
And some examples.
So basically, geoengineering is when humans intentionally manipulate the Earth's climate system on a large scale.
Okay.
There's two main types: solar radiation management, or SRM, and weather modification.
Okay, I've heard of those.
Yeah.
So SRM, that's like blocking sunlight from hitting the Earth?
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard of like putting giant mirrors in space or something.
Yeah, well, that's one idea.
Okay.
But a more common one is injecting reflective particles into the stratosphere.
So like a giant sunshade, basically.
Yeah, like creating a kind of haze that reflects some of the sunlight back into space.
Interesting.
And then you have weather modification.
Okay, so what would be an example of weather modification?
So that's things like cloud seeding.
Okay.
Where they use chemicals like silver iodide to make clouds produce rain.
So you can make it rain in a certain place.
Exactly. That's the idea.
Wow. So we're talking about some pretty powerful technologies.
Oh, yeah.
But how do we know?
Like really powerful.
Yeah. How do we know if any of this is actually happening, or is this all just theory?
Right.
Like what evidence do we have?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, right?
Okay.
There are some people pointing to unusual cloud formations.
Okay.
And persistent contrails.
You mean those white lines you see behind airplanes?
Exactly.
Okay.
Some researchers think those could be signs of atmospheric spring.
Really? So they might not just be normal contrails?
That's what some people are saying. And then you have independent labs finding elevated levels of certain nanoparticles.
Nanoparticles?
Yeah, tiny particles.
Okay.
Things like aluminum, barium, strontium.
Okay, and where are they finding these?
In soil samples, water samples, even in biological tissues.
Wow. And what do those particles have to do with geoengineering?
Well, the interesting thing is those are the same substances that are mentioned in patents related to geoengineering technologies.
So it's like they're finding the fingerprints of geoengineering.
Yeah, that's kind of the argument.
Okay, so we've got the weird clouds, the contrails, and now these nanoparticles.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any hard scientific data to support any of this?
Yeah, actually there is.
Okay.
There's data from atmospheric testing that shows high concentrations of these particles at altitudes that are really hard to explain naturally.
So, like, they shouldn't be there unless something is putting them there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you also have historical records of weather modification experiments.
Oh, really? Going back how far?
Decades.
Oh.
And there are even people who claim to have firsthand knowledge of these programs.
Like whistleblowers.
Yeah, whistleblowers from within the scientific community and even the military.
Okay, so if this stuff is really happening on a large scale, why aren't more people talking about it?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
One possibility is that it's all classified, top secret for national security reasons.
Okay, so they're just keeping it under wraps.
Yeah, that's one theory.
What's another theory?
Well, another possibility is that the information is out there, but it gets buried under all the noise.
So it's like a needle in a haystack.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's hard to know what's real and what's not.
Yeah, it's tough to sift through all the information and figure out what's credible.
So connecting this back to the problem reaction solution idea we were talking about, could it be that some of the extreme weather events we're seeing aren't actually natural disasters,
Okay.
but maybe engineered?
That's what some researchers, activists are suggesting.
Really? So like they're creating these events to scare people, and then they'll come in with their geoengineering solution.
Yeah, and if you think about it, the ability to control the weather could be used as a weapon.
Oh, wow.
You could create droughts, floods, all sorts of things to destabilize regions, manipulate food prices, control water resources.
So basically, whoever controls the weather controls the world.
In a sense, yeah.
That's a pretty scary thought.
It is a scary thought.
So it's all about power and control.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Like if you can create a crisis, then you can present yourself as the hero with the solution.
Exactly.
And that gives you a lot of power.
A lot of power.
Okay, so that's the problem and the solution. But what about the reaction?
Well, the reaction is what we're seeing now.
Okay.
People are confused, they're scared, they're looking for answers.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, right?
Exactly.
Trying to make sense of all this.
Trying to figure out what's real, what's not, and what it all means.
Right, because this stuff has huge implications, not just for the environment, but for all of us.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into those implications next.
Okay.
But before we do, I want to encourage our listeners to really pay attention to what you're seeing around you. Look at the clouds, look at those contrails, and ask yourself, are they just normal? Or could they be something more?
It's a question worth asking.
It is.
And we'll explore those questions and more when we come back.
We'll see you on the other side.
See you then.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So before the break, we were talking about some of the possible consequences of geoengineering. And it seems like there's a lot that could go wrong.
Yeah, there's this big concern about what are called unintended consequences.
Okay, so like, what do you mean by that?
Well, the Earth's climate system, it's incredibly complex, right?
Yeah.
It's all interconnected, so many variables.
Yeah.
And when you start messing with one part of it, it can have ripple effects that you just don't anticipate.
So even if someone was trying to do something good with geoengineering, like let's say trying to fight climate change,
Right.
it could still backfire.
Absolutely.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Yeah, so imagine they start trying to manipulate rainfall patterns
Okay.
with the idea of maybe bringing more rain to drought-stricken areas, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good in theory.
Yeah.
But then what if that inadvertently causes floods in other regions?
Oh, wow.
Or maybe it disrupts the monsoon season somewhere else.
And then that would have a huge impact on like agriculture, ecosystems.
Huge people's lives.
Absolutely. I mean, you're talking about potentially devastating consequences.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about those nanoparticles that they're finding.
Right.
Like aluminum, barium, strontium.
Yeah, what about the health effects of that stuff, right?
Yeah. What are people saying about that?
Well, there's more and more research coming out linking these nanoparticles to a whole range of health problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, for example, some studies have found a correlation between aluminum and neurological disorders.
Like Alzheimer's.
Yeah, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, things like that.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
And then barium has been linked to respiratory problems, heart problems.
So it's like these things could be building up in our bodies and causing all sorts of issues.
Exactly, and we might not even realize it.
And the thing is, we don't even know the long-term effects.
Right, there's just not enough research on the long-term impact of these substances on human health.
So it's like a giant experiment. It's kind of, a giant experiment on the planet and on ourselves.
And we're the guinea pigs.
In a way, yeah.
And the people in control aren't exactly being transparent about what they're doing.
No, not at all. And that makes it even more concerning.
Right, because if this is happening on a large scale, Shouldn't there be some kind of global discussion about it?
Absolutely, you would think so.
Like some kind of consensus or oversight?
Yeah, but right now it seems like a small group of people are making decisions with potentially huge consequences for the whole planet.
And the rest of us are just left in the dark.
Pretty much.
So we've got this lack of transparency, the potential for these catastrophic unintended consequences,
Right.
and then the possibility that this technology could be used to control resources, control populations.
It's not looking good.
It's starting to sound less like science and more like some kind of dystopian sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it's a pretty bleak picture.
But I'm still trying to understand the why.
The why.
Yeah, like if the risks are so great, why would anyone want to do this in the first place?
Well, we talked earlier about how controlling the weather could give you control over resources.
Right.
I mean, imagine being able to decide which countries get rain and which ones don't.
You could control food production.
Exactly. You could manipulate global markets, create economic dependencies.
Even influence political outcomes.
Absolutely. So in a world where resources are becoming more and more scarce, the ability to control the climate could be the ultimate power play.
So it all comes down to power. In the end, yeah, it seems like it.
Okay, so let's say this problem reaction solution thing is really happening.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do about it?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. The more people understand what's going on, the more we can start demanding accountability and transparency.
So we shouldn't just give up and accept this as our fate.
Absolutely not. I mean, the future isn't set in stone, right?
Right.
We can educate ourselves. We can support independent research. We can push for more democratic control over these technologies.
So we still have a choice.
We always have a choice.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's about making our voices heard and making sure that these technologies, if they are going to be used, are used responsibly and ethically.
So we need to stay informed, stay engaged, and keep pushing for change.
Keep pushing.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do here, right?
Exactly.
Just trying to get the information out there, get people thinking about these issues.
Because if we don't talk about it, nothing will change.
Exactly. Silence is not an option.
And on that note, we're going to go to a quick break, but we'll be right back to wrap things up and talk about what the future might hold if geoengineering continues unchecked.
We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So we've been talking about geoengineering, and you know, it's a really complex issue.
It is.
It's got so many different facets.
Yeah, and I think for me,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how a technology that's often presented as like the solution to climate change.
Yeah.
You know,
The savior.
yeah, it's going to save us all.
Yeah.
Can also raise so many questions
Red flags. Yeah.
about like control and manipulation,
Yeah.
unintended consequences.
Yeah, exactly. Like we were just talking about.
Mhm.
And the thing is, like,
Yeah,
there's evidence suggesting that this might already be happening
right.
on a scale that most people don't realize.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so urgent to talk about.
Exactly.
Like if it's already happening,
yeah.
then who's making the decisions about how and when it's used?
Right. And who benefits from that and who's taking all the risk.
Exactly.
And, you know, we've talked about this problem reaction solution theory
Right.
where a crisis is created
Hmm.
to kind of pave the way for a solution that was already planned.
Yeah, like a predetermined solution.
Yeah. And if that's being applied to geoengineering,
That's a scary thought.
it is a scary thought because then it's all about control.
Yeah, it's about manipulation.
Exploitation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it really feels like we're at a crossroads here.
I agree with you.
Like, on the one hand, geoengineering could potentially help with climate change.
Right.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
it could be used for all the wrong reasons.
For all the wrong reasons.
It's got to consolidate power,
Yeah.
control resources, even kind of like redraw the geopolitical map.
Exactly. And who gets to decide that, right?
Yeah.
Like who gets to decide how the world is going to be
That's the question.
reshaped?
And I think, you know, one of the biggest takeaways from all of this is that we can't just sit back and let this happen.
No, we have to be active participants.
Yeah, we need to be informed.
Yes.
We need to engage in these discussions.
Absolutely.
We need to demand transparency.
Transparency is key.
Because if we don't,
Yeah,
you know who will.
exactly. And that's not a future I want to live in.
Yeah, so, I mean, as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Yeah, okay.
Don't just take what you hear at face value.
Right.
Do your own research.
Yeah.
Explore these different perspectives.
Question everything.
Question everything and come to your own conclusions.
Exactly. Because the future is not set in stone.
Right.
We all have a role to play in shaping it.
And if geoengineering is a part of that future,
Yeah.
we need to make sure that it's used responsibly.
Responsibly and ethically.
Ethically and for the benefit of everyone.
For the benefit of all humankind, that's right.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of geoengineering.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
And it's a topic that I'm sure we'll be revisiting
Oh, definitely.
as things continue to develop.
As the story unfolds.
Yeah, so until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop questioning.
Never stop questioning. That's the key.
Absolutely.
All right, take care.
See you later.